It's just like, and they talk a little bit about that in the book, and they talk about how poorly sort of Oliver was received, and they boil it down to it primarily being because Oliver, because the audience knew that Oliver was a scumbag, and Ryan knew that Oliver was a scumbag, but nobody else knew that Oliver was a scumbag. And they said that was a mistake, was letting the audience in on the fact that Oliver was a scumbag instead of making it seem like Ryan was out on a limb thinking that Oliver was a scumbag, because then it just frustrated the fans because the rest of the characters on the show couldn't see what Ryan was seeing, versus if you hadn't seen that he was a scumbag, you might have had a different impression of him.
Or they left it like, questionable.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Like
exactly. And they did that for like the first episode or the second episode, but then they did the big reveal with him watching outside the window or whatever. And
stalking behavior.
Yeah. Just incredibly sinister.
Well, can we I was going to say, can we talk a little bit about how, Marissa kind of drives this, like, I don't know, like if a woman was like, a girl, I guess, was acting like that to you, how much tolerance would you have as far as, oh, he's just a friend, or, oh, hey, let's be friends,
right.
That theme.
right. Oh yeah. Let's just be friends. We're better off as friends. I think I made a joke here, at some point in my notes where I said that every time my ex and I got together as friends, we ended up making out. So I don't think that works really. Yeah. Here I go. I had an ex-girlfriend I tried to be friends with and just hang out and do whatever. And we always ended up making out.
She didn't say, put a baby in me or anything like that?
Nothing like that. Maybe not exactly those words.
But but like Seth does it, Ryan does it, they all do it.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we could call this. You could alternative titles for the show could be let's just be friends, or I don't want to talk about it.
I don't. That's right. Even the adults do it too.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And so, yeah. So that's, and Oliver is sort of, I mean, he's very, I find him very entertaining. And I think that I feel like the storyline ends at sort of exactly the right point. I was starting to get tired of him. They got rid of him, and that was that.
Yeah.
But there's a couple of things that happen when Oliver's on the show. So the first thing that happens is, Seth makes the classic sitcom suggestion to Ryan of, hey, why don't you break into the file room? And Ryan's like, oh, that's a really good idea. Let's do that. And of course it's unlocked. So he just gets in there anyway. And he gets caught while he does it. And so he gets suspended from school. He's in detention. And this is the thing that I really noticed is the only two faces of color you see at Harbor the entire season are in detention with Ryan. And so I wrote, even in overprivileged prep school, the black kids go to jail.
Or they get the detention. That's right.
So yeah, and then when it's over, and so when Oliver turns out to be evil, right? Because he's got this borderline personality disorder, and he pulls the gun, and Ryan and Sandy rescue Marissa after he goes full Stan on her, like, all is immediately forgiven for Ryan. Like, nobody is like, oh yeah, well, you still broke into the file room and stole information. He's like, nope, he's just back in school, no consequences. I wrote here, I'm surprised they didn't hang up a Ryan was right banner like would have happened on The Simpsons.
That's pretty good.
So yeah, that's Oliver Trask, and he's interesting. But yeah.
Well, it's funny that as you mentioned, like never to be heard from again.
Yeah.
In the series.
No,
yeah.
just disappears. Like I was sure there was a whole like scam with his, his stupid Four Seasons hotel suite and everything else. I'm sure, again, I feel like there's all these little loose end plot threads that they didn't even bother thinking about, that in a show where they weren't just like so obsessed with writing new storylines every week, that they would have kind of chased that one down a little bit more, and we would have learned a lot more about Oliver, and we might have met his parents at some point, and it might have been interesting. So that gets us through Oliver, and it also gets us sort of through the Marissa has a substance problem. Although I kind of want to talk about that a little bit more, because that's a pretty big plot for the first half of season 1, which then recurs again in season 2, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So we see the first kind of glimpses of this, I think, when Marissa in the first episode, right? When Marissa turns up on or is passed out, and Summer drops her off and just puts her on the sidewalk outside her house.
Well, like they even have that. It isn't literally in the first episode where like they were doing the fashion show, I think it was, and she has to drink to calm her nerves or whatever, before going on to walk the catwalk.
Yeah, and then they went to the party afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and she got drunker there. And then Ryan sort of abducts her from her front patio and absconds with her back to his pool house. I have one of my theses here, and we'll talk about it a little bit more as we talk through the plots. But one of my theses here is Ryan Atwood is a violent psychopath. And my tag for that is that just because he's violently obsessed with and or protective of women, quote unquote protective of women, doesn't make him less violent or psychopathic. And he literally kidnaps her from her front step and brings her back to his bedroom at the house next door, a person that he doesn't really know at all, that he just met for the first time out in front of their house, and is saving her or whatever. It's weird stuff. It's weird stuff.
Well, is it possible to have that much chemistry with somebody like right off the bat that you would? I don't know. It seems just very awkward to me. And I like if you saw her on the passed out drunk on the step of your house, what would you have done, right? It's like, man, I'm not doing nothing. I'm watching around, fucking back in my house.
If I was going to do anything at all, I would have rung the doorbell. And like,
exactly.
Hey, somebody left something. You guys have a package or whatever. I don't know.
You take a picture to confirm.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. With my phone, like. No, I certainly wouldn't put myself in a position where I abducted a drunk, passed out girl and let her sleep in my
teenager.
Bed.
Yeah.
Would not have been a good idea. But that
was normal in the early 2000s.
Apparently.
Well, the pilot is really interesting also because, you had mentioned the thing about the smoking. In this pilot, they like at that house party.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there was like the illicit drug, like illegal, like, cocaine, and there were threesomes happening.
Yeah, Seth goes, "Oh, look, cocaine."
Yeah.
Which I think was an ad lib. I think it was an improv. And that was one of the things about Seth that they talked about in the book, is that a lot of his lines were improv, which is good and bad in some ways. It really makes it hard for the other actors, I would say.
Just deliver your lines, dude.
Right. Well, they talked about when his audition, he came in and didn't do the lines. He improv'd the whole thing, and they hated him. And so he
really?
almost didn't get the part. And then he came back like 2 weeks, 3 weeks later when they had tested a bunch of other people and they hadn't found the person they wanted yet. And they're like, hey, we really think he's got it in him. Let's talk to his agent. They talked to his agent and said, hey, make sure he comes prepared and does the material and that sort of thing, and not, doesn't just show up and read whatever he wants. And he came in and did the audition, and he did really well, and the network loved him, and that was what made the difference. But yeah, he almost put himself in a position where he wasn't going to get the job because he didn't take it seriously.
He just was going to blow off that first meeting, huh?
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty good then.
Yes, I suppose. But yeah, so Marissa goes to resulting from all of the things that are going wrong in her life, right? So up until we talk about the TJ episode, which is the fall finale, quote unquote. It's one of the first times that anybody did that on TV, where they had this sort of cliffhanger at the end of their fall half of their season that they wanted to make you sort of tune in for the second half. And the question was, is Marissa alive or dead? Because she ODs on Oxy that Summer bought for her stepmom in TJ.
Yeah.
And it's because of all of the other stuff that's going on in her life, but also because her dad and her mom are getting divorced. And then her dad called her to break the news to her while they were in the car on their way down.
You should have left a note.
You should have left a note. That's right. What did Arrested Development teach us?
Yes.
Yes. That's why you always leave a note. But yeah, so she ODs on Oxy, and Ryan sort of saves her. But the network actually, at that point in the episode, or at that point in the season, they wanted them to leave it open because they weren't sure if they wanted to fire Misha Barton or not at that point. They were still, as far as they were concerned, the jury was still out on whether Misha Barton was going to be the character that they wanted to roll with as Marissa, or if they wanted to kill off Marissa and you do another character. So this is the sort of the first instance of the network sort of trying to get rid of Misha Barton / Marissa Cooper off the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it turned out she was just too popular and they couldn't do it. So
what do you think of her as far as like a character, or as far as like her arc during that first season?
I think it's a very realistic sort of portrayal of a deeply troubled girl in high school.
Yeah.
And I think that it also is consistent that she would be that troubled given the environment that she's being raised in, the massive amount of pressure that's being put on her, coupled with her mom being as terrible as she is, her dad being as negligent as he is, and her boyfriend being Luke.
I mean, he is the Labrador puppy or whatever it is they call him.
Well, eventually he does become that. And he has one of the great, Chris Carmack, I think is the actor's name, has one of the great sort of redemption arcs on the show where he is the villain of all villains for the first like 7 or 8 episodes. And then he immediately sort of takes this hard right turn and becomes like part of the group and part of the friend group. Yeah. And we'll talk about sort of, I think where the pivot point is on that is when we find out about his gay dad. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. I have some thoughts on that. But yeah, it's convincing. I think it's a good portrayal. I don't think Misha Barton's acting skills were a problem for the show. Would I say it that way? Is that a fair way to say it? I don't think she's the best, but I don't think she's the worst. I don't think she's bad either.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is another instance where I think she is perfectly cast as far as, like you're saying, like they were talking about the most beautiful girl in high school, like with, I'm assuming prom queen and all this other stuff.
Oh, yeah,
and all
the
the pressure
social
that
chair
you have to live
and all
up.
that.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And she is, look, Misha Barton, at that point in time, absolutely gorgeous. No doubt about it. Just
Yeah.
Stunning. Even if she's not your quote unquote, not at your type, right? If you don't like girls who are very slender or whatever, she's still, like she's a model basically.
Yeah. I don't know. I think the first time I saw her, I thought she kind of looked like E.T. So,
See, that's what I think about Olivia Wilde. I think she looks like one of the Greys, like, the almond shaped heads with the eyes. I think she looks, she could, if I found out she was a Grey, I wouldn't be surprised.